Welcome to the Hollywood Makers Podcast. My name is Glori, and today I'm continuing my conversation with Dr. Albert Bermonte. If you haven't heard part one, go back and catch up. Otherwise, let's get back into it.
I heard this from another psychologist who said that we have about 70,000 thoughts that enter our brain on a daily basis.
Great.
But that's quick. But they
Yeah.
also exit very fast.
Mhm.
We sometimes give energy to that, and we sometimes pay attention more towards the negative
Yeah.
thoughts.
Mhm.
And that's more of an evolutionary thing, too, because paying attention to negative things is what helped us survive.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, the safety, right? And like
Yeah,
having,
the safety net, of
yeah.
course. And
Mhm.
and and I'll give you a real life example of paying attention to negative things. You could get 20 compliments on a presentation or something you've done, and then you get maybe one or two negative, scathing remarks. And most people, without realizing it, are going to start gravitating more towards the one or two scathing remarks and totally delete all of the good things they just heard.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's like, and I learned this too as being a college professor. The one lesson that I think I've learned the most from doing this work for over 20 years, you're not going to please everybody.
Yeah.
And, usually in a typical semester when I was teaching full time, I would have up to a couple hundred a semester students. Now part time, I have about between 65, 75 a
Mhm.
semester and like combined in these different classes. Not everybody's going to be a fan.
Yeah.
And I've learned this too. Like I could have a lot of people say, students would say 90% of them, it's a great class, best class ever. And then I would have a small handful that would say, this class was a waste of time, the professor didn't know what he was doing and all of this stuff. And the reptilian part of my brain, oh no, you know, the
Mhm.
10% said that I don't know what I'm talking about. And, and all of this stuff. And I'd be forgetting about the 90% who said that this was a great class.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's also learning to be able to sift through because when people are in a really insecure or negative state on their own, they tend to project onto other people.
Yeah.
They tend to project. So anytime like you're a business person, you get a customer or a client that complains about you, what sometimes you have to do is what I advise everyone to do is to separate. Okay, is this a legitimate complaint, like maybe some a feedback point, or is this someone just wanting to complain?
Yeah.
Because there's thousands of people like that on the internet that would
Mhm.
just love to just
Yeah.
complain to complain just to complain.
Mhm.
So if it's that, then we have to learn to ignore that. But again, if there's some feedback, because even sometimes in my evaluations, if I would get a critical mark, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, maybe I'll do something differently next time.
Yeah.
I could do that differently next time. It's a good feedback point.
Yeah.
Again, feedback.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to like kind of ask is the two concepts, right? Of one being able to take negative things and turn them into feedback, right? But then also not having to focus on only the negative things and knowing that like, you if the like overwhelming majority of
Hmm.
that feedback is positive, not harping on that. But it's like I think that's where something for me specifically, I think I've struggled to find that balance of like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
yeah,
So have
like
I. So have I.
you
Absolutely.
know,
Totally relate to that. Yeah.
just
And even when you look at it as feedback, then it's not negative.
mm,
It's okay. Yeah, you have a point here.
yeah,
Um, Good. I'll do that next time. Thank you for that.
mhm.
Or it's just like, well, you didn't like the course, or they didn't like their grade. So, yeah, I mean,
Like, oh well,
oh, sorry,
yeah,
you feel that way, but I'm gonna do what I need to do, and
yeah,
so and naturally going like even and I tell other young teachers this too now. When you give when a student earns a bad grade, they may not like the class. That's kind of self-explanatory. It's going to happen. You'll never hear a student say, "Yeah, this is the best class ever," but I failed it. It was just, no.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and that kind
So
of goes back to what you were saying about the people will project their own things onto other people, right? Where it's more like their own problem, and you have to remember to separate the two, right? And being
yeah,
like, this is not about me.
Oh, absolutely. And even with naysayers in your life too, because a lot of actors I work with, I mean, they're primed to get a lot of critical family members and,
Oh yeah.
oh, you're in this, thankless profession and all
Mhm.
this type of stuff. Because I remember a while back I was having lunch with a client and she was like really concerned because her partner, significant other, would always would always like ridicule or poo-poo her dreams of being an actor.
Mhm.
Every moment that they talked about something about acting, because he had something to say critically about that.
Yeah.
And she wanted my, kind of insider advice on how to, get him to appreciate that. And, I remember just having a conversation where like, I was like, well, did you think of the fact that he may be fearful of you leaving him? So, like, let's say you get this role or you become a successful actor. When you become one, I always like to say when.
Mhm.
Well, he's worried about that you may leave him or not be in love with him anymore.
Yeah. That's true.
And I was like, so it may have nothing to do with you. It's the way he's looking at the
Mhm.
industry. So, and I could see the wheels turning, and I don't know specifically what happened, but I know like,
Mhm.
a year later they were no longer together, which I thought, yeah, that
Okay.
might have been
Mhm.
better off. But
Mhm.
and it's not easy to do that. I get it, but sometimes you have to look at the critics in your life, as maybe they're working from a place of insecurity,
Yeah.
of their own dreams, and they're just resentful because you're achieving your dream.
Yeah. That's something too that I think is a really interesting idea because I think it's something that like a lot of people almost like kind of intuitively know, but I think sometimes you like talk yourself out of that. You're like, no, 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 I'm being too like self-absorbed. It's like it's not that people are just, thinking this because of their own stuff. It has to be about me. Like or at least like that's kind of like what I hear a lot of people around me kind of saying, where it's more like,
Hmm.
oh no, it's not that they're fine. It's more me. And I'm like, okay, but like there is sometimes I think it's hard to not feel like it's an ego thing, right? Of like, oh,
Yeah,
people are just hating on me to hate on me.
yeah, and absolutely, because people that are truly confident and happy are not going to be hating on people,
Yeah.
are not going to be, I mean, of course, now you may have people that will challenge you and maybe play devil's advocate sometimes. That's a totally different ball game,
Yeah.
whereas, like a friend telling you what you may not want to hear at the moment,
Mhm.
but that's because it's there to help you
Yeah.
rather than to put you down. It's there to kind of like, okay, did you think about this? Because it's still at a place of I'm building you up.
Yeah. Mhm. It's like from the place of more like, okay, yeah, I'm wanting the best for you genuinely versus like just the kind of criticisms without anything
Yeah,
else.
or I'm holding you to a higher standard of yourself,
Yeah.
you be accountable.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do like that. I appreciate that. I feel like that's important to hear. I feel like that
yeah.
the idea of like confident people, happy people don't do those things, right? They don't say like things that are like very hurtful in that way or just are like bringing you down, right? And it's like that's when you know it is the difference of like someone who's actually on
Yeah.
your side versus
And
someone who
that's when you kind of know, okay, this is why again you really have to take good care of your social circle.
Mhm. True. You did mention that the idea of like knowing who to keep around you, and I think that is also important. I think as like I think something maybe you kind of take a little bit for granted sometimes as you're going through the world of like these are just people who I love or people who are around me or they've been around me or whatever. Not necessarily like who is the best to like kind of help you be your best self and to
Yeah.
actually succeed in your own like personal endeavors or whatever. But who are the people who are actually going to support you through that versus just kind of being there in your life.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah. I would like to talk about. There is a specific thing that, again, my actress friend that I talked to her last night actually, and she mentioned this because I told her that we were going to be recording this episode, and she was like, "This is something that I need help with," and I was like, "Okay, I will
Sure.
pass it along." But it's kind of the idea of like getting into the industry, right? She is an Indian woman. She is like a person of color, and
Hmm.
getting into it and seeing and feeling like she kind of has to be the voice for all of the Indian people who come after her, right? And since like coming into any industry as a minority, right? And kind of you mentioned a little bit too, like the imposter syndrome of it all, but also the idea of that you're
Hmm.
carrying the weight of everyone else, and so you kind of have to be this like perfect person, right? And the pressure that comes with that, and um, how that can even make her get in her own way even more. Because now it's not just like, oh, I can't do this. It's like, well, even if I could, like, I don't want to let people down, or like people expect this from me, so I have to act in this certain way. And kind of, I think it's something that I've seen mirrored even in like the news a little bit too. Like, I think it was like Lupita Nyong'o, and she like spoke out about, having to maybe turn down opportunities because you kind of do get typecast in certain ways, and
Hmm.
there's still a lot of that happening, right, in the industry of
Oh.
like people who are
Hmm.
very successful, but it's like they'll still kind of be put into those boxes like based on, racial identity, gender identity, those like more common like minority groups. So I guess from your perspective, I'd love to hear, just how do you at least reconcile with like those thoughts that come into your mind?
Well, I mean, the one thing that I would advise, especially with your friend, is to brand. Branding is very important.
Yeah.
Um, I would definitely, look at like have a vision board of what types of roles that she wants to play, what type
Mhm.
of characters she wants to play, and then what she would do is market herself, get her headshots that match that category, get you know, even some media clips of because we can film things, with now some actor friends and film some, you know, concepts or mini scripts of you acting in that certain way,
Yeah.
and then that's where you should market yourself. Now, yes, that is true. You are going to get typecast, and that will happen. But then also, when you land representation, these are conversations you should be having in the beginning with your representative, your agent manager, and saying, okay, these are the types of roles I want to play. This is what I don't want to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to play this role. Because, for example, I do have some Middle Eastern clients on my roster who would say I'd rather not go for terrorist type roles
Yeah. Hmm.
because I still see that today. Arab terrorists. Like, okay, if you don't want to do that, that's fine, and we're not going to
Yeah.
submit
Mhm.
you that. Or even some Spanish or black, I'll see like housekeeper. No, okay,
Yeah. Like, mhm.
But I think also having integrity, which I like about Lupita, is being able to say no to things.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that because especially when you're in an industry where it's so ultra competitive, and that one part of me wants to be grateful that okay, I have a job,
Yeah.
but at the same time, what is your integrity saying to you?
Yeah.
Your integrity is much more important to you. And I know a lot of actors who turn down lucrative roles because of their integrity. So the one thing I would say is one is to really brand yourself to whatever it is that your friend is trying to go for and communicate that with everyone she works with. And then um, really just be proactive. Because a lot of times with actors, because it's such a competitive industry, there's so many jobs far and between, a lot of actors will just submit to anything, like just throw spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah.
So the one thing I would really recommend to do is be curate, and
Mhm.
be critical of the types of jobs you're applying for, and again having those communication if you have other people on your team that are also pitching you for roles.
Yeah.
And so that would be the one thing I would really say is transcend those opportunities. So, um, and this is also a great time for diversity.
Yeah. Mhm.
And what we also need is not just diversity in front of the camera, but behind the camera, because it's hard to tell, like, an Indian story if you have a white, and I'm sorry to say this, but if you have a white person writing that.
Yeah.
The same thing, I remember once I had one of my friends, colleagues, casting director, who met was right about to cast the was requested to cast the project, and it
Mhm.
was about the black experience, but the writer was white, and it's like, okay,
Like, well, what do you mean?
no, no,
Yeah.
and she turned it down because it's like, look, I can't, I don't see the authenticity here.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, so what we need, and I think one of the steps we need is we need more creatives, diverse creatives, women especially, a woman of color to be behind the camera and writing,
Yeah.
behind the camera and producing. Not just it's great in front of the camera, wonderful,
Yeah.
but we need that because I think that's one of the going to be the solutions to stopping this stereotype,
Right.
thing.
Mhm. Is that
Because a
people
lot of times, even we stereotype even with good intentions too.
yeah.
So and that's where that's going to have to stop. I mean, and even questioning things. So I remember once when I was in my partnership, we were working on this one commercial breakdown came in, and they needed prisoners. And so I think you know where I'm going to go here. What they
Yep.
were looking for were
Mhm.
black men. I'm like, okay, why do they have to be black?
Yeah.
Why can't they be any, all ethnicity?
Yeah.
Um, why specific? And I remember we reached out because this is when I was with my partner at the time. We reached out to casting and we kind of legitimately say, hey, and you put this commercial breakdown out and you said that you wanted prisoners, but why did it have to be black?
Mhm.
And the answer was, well, that's what the ad agency wants. I'm like, okay, but didn't you have a shouldn't you have had a conversation with the ad agency and said like,
Yeah.
let's open this up a bit? Now of course if you get the best actors and they are black, fine. But that's a whole nother thing. Don't specifically ask for black.
Yeah.
Because then that looks very stereotypical and very racist.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like
Implied, even if it's implicit, but it's
Mhm.
still racist. Or, you still see a lot of TV shows and like, okay, oh, they're gunned down by, thugs, and what are they? Like right there. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay,
Yeah.
why didn't the agents or managers exec kind of like speak up about that?
Yeah, it's like being able to have those conversations kind of on the other side of things, which I do agree too. I think that is like really important that you said that. It's more about kind of those writers, those producers who are kind of putting these projects together, who are creating like the stories,
Yeah,
right? To take the care to make stories that are more diverse, that allow opportunities for, those actors of color to
yeah,
experience
of
something
course.
different, right? And to not be in like that kind of same
Or
typecast.
not to be pigeonholed into things, or
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm sure I can probably imagine that your friend is going to be which is not always a bad thing, but probably typecast as the doctor, the scientist, the nurse, the
She's saying that like they're keep making her having to like learn Arabic, and she's like, I do not speak Arabic, but like
yeah.
it's
Well,
stuff
I
like
mean, and that's the one thing that when she works, she lands representation to tell like, look, I don't speak Arabic. I'm not interested in going out for Arabic
mm,
roles, and that's also a nuance thing because most I can tell you, from knowing people who are from the Middle East, there's a big difference between Indian people and Arabic
yeah,
people, 100%.
mm,
Now they may physically look the same skin tone wise,
mm,
but there's so many nuanced differences that, just like, there's someone who's from like the Honduras versus somebody from, Brazil or Venezuela are going to look completely
yeah,
different. Maybe
exactly,
not to the untrained eye,
yeah.
but
Mm. But it's like
you go close up to,
yeah, because there'll be like so I feel like few of them too. It's like, well, we need this role as like an Arabic person, so they're like, well, you're Indian, but like too bad, like you could go do this, and it's like
yeah,
unfortunately those are the opportunities that are like available to her because those are the ones that where they're looking for someone who does at least look like her, right? But it's like,
yeah.
um, yeah, which again highlights the importance of like creating those
And,
stories
and,
for
and I know a lot of actors who would generally say that. Like,
yeah,
there's been, in the past like 10 years, 5 to 10 years, there's been even more of a push for like LGBTQ,
yeah,
plus. And a lot of times, a lot of actors, especially trans, will not, you know, like they really feel like if you want a trans person playing a role, not an actor who can play trans, you should actually have a trans person
yeah,
playing a role.
mhm,
Not, and I know a lot of actors who will do that. Be like, look, they will turn down roles if
mhm,
they're not genuinely in that category. And
yeah,
I think I applaud that.
yeah. It's like the integrity, like you mentioned before, the being able to say like, okay, what do I actually believe, and like making the difficult choice to kind of turn down maybe an opportunity that just isn't for you. Like it's
Yeah,
not
so that's the
yours.
right fit.
Mm,
And so I think that's where it's like you just have to learn to say no and be okay with that.
mm,
With comfortable saying no. And it's a hard thing to do, but
yeah,
your integrity at the end of the day. So that's what I would really tell your friend to do is
mm. Yeah, I agree.
Be
And I sort of
mindful.
kind of the same thing a little bit. I was like, especially the branding part. I mean, for me, like being in marketing and branding, I'm like, the thing is, like, you can shape the image that people have of you, right? And I
Absolutely.
obviously we fall into the trap of like, I'm the only black girl in the room, so I really have to represent for everyone. But I'm like, you know what? What I am is me, right? And so I can do
Yeah.
that the best. And so I'm going to give you that, and hopefully that might change your perception or something.
Yeah.
That regardless, I'm kind of just going to come as like my most authentic self and do what I came here to do, which is, whatever it
Yeah.
is.
And if it's not the right vision, because
Yeah.
one story I'll tell you, this is kind of a client had called this outrage. She was on the voiceover. She's a black female, really good voice, amazing voice, good for voiceover. And she was working for a client, it was some software company, and she was reading the copy into the voiceover. And they said to her, "Look, we need you to sound more urban."
Yeah. That's it.
Whoa, and that's where I was like, "Why?"
Yeah.
And so that goes again with the branding. And again, they were white, the creators. So there you go.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what we need to do is be very mindful. We need more people that are diverse in those writer rooms.
Hmm.
Now, that may not be an overnight solution, but that's what I would definitely suggest what we need to do.
Yeah. That is like the
Um,
long term idea. And I think it's like, I feel like the shift is happening. You see it like a lot
oh
more.
yeah, it's definitely happening. I mean,
Mhm.
it's I'd say the past 10 years it's gotten a lot better. I
Yeah.
mean, we still need work to do.
Sure.
We still have a lot of work to do, but I think it's getting better.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I guess like maybe kind of one last question, or maybe like a closing, any
Sure.
closing thoughts
Hmm.
that you have. But I guess just if you could give like any advice in general for people in the industry, right? Like this is a tough industry. It's competitive, like I mentioned, all the rejection, all the, you know, negative things that happen with it. If there's like one thing that people should take away from everything.
Well, I mentioned the feedback, the failure feedback. The last thing I will say is the word rejection.
Mm,
No, I think it sounds very personal. It sounds and it's not. It's not personal when you don't get the
yeah.
role. So what I often say, this is a quote I read. I don't remember the author or if even there was one, but it was like, there's no such thing as rejection. Only a simple reminder that your services are not needed today.
Mm,
So I think if you can start separating yourself from, when you get that no, it just means not today, not now. It's
mhm.
rarely not ever. We internalize that.
Yeah. We take it as
It's
like
like
kind of.
catastrophizing things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the kind of like you said, going back to the worst case scenario, and like it's all become that bad, but it's really just like, yeah, not today. That was reminds me of something I heard recently. Someone I went to like an event, and there was like a keynote speaker, and she had said it's not rejection, it's redirection. It's just
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's not.
And that's when people say, I'm like, like I know, and sometimes I'll be a little sarcastic, but when people say I don't want to reject, well, what rejection?
Yeah,
What, what? You know, there is none. It's we create the story. So
exactly.
that's what I would say is work, recreate the story.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing, and that's a beautiful thought to leave us with. Thank you so much once again for joining us. I feel like this has
Thank
been
you so
such a,
much for having me.
of course, it's been a great conversation, and yeah, we'll talk to you later.
See you later.
Thank you all for tuning into today's episode. Remember to like, subscribe, and be a part of the Hollywood Makers community. We have more great things coming your way, so stay tuned. Once again, I'm Glory, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.